the great stories about Airwallex is your origin story, which actually started with a coffee shop. Do you want to talk to us through how that all came about?
So I kind of always like to invest in things, and early stage of my work in A&Z and NAB, and I invested in a lot of real estate, and cafe is one of the ventures. Through that cafe, we figured we had to import a lot of goods and services from overseas, especially the coffee cups and packages and food packages. I remember there was $15,000 worth of product that we need to import from China, that we need to pay a huge amount of fees on FX and international transaction fee. I think it's add up about $600. And we compare a lot of product and vendors on the market like Western Union, OFX, PayPal, and we went to a few of the banks as well. And we couldn't find a better way to do this. And they're all quite expensive, especially for the lower end of the clientele. I mean, considering someone just starting a small business and have no relationship in the sort of banking finance industry, doesn't do huge volume, so you basically have to pay 4 to 6% in terms of FX and international transaction fee. That I was working in the actual FX trading space, and I know how much this thing is cost and how to build a technology around it to solve this specific problem. That's one of the I guess reasons why I wanted to start Airwallex in the first instance. Basically, it's around building something to solving a real world problem instead of just building a platform, then find out what you're solving. So we basically, from a get-go, we know there's an issue on the B2B payment space, especially in Asia Pacific, and we identify this opportunity and how big the opportunity is and how quickly we can scale once we build a product. And we're just basically concentrating all our energy into solving this problem.
So you guys just did a fairly big raise recently, and one of your investors was Sequoia China, is that correct? Yeah. So one of the things I guess I'd like to explore with you is, often when we talk about global businesses or getting funding, the Australian market is still very fixated on the US market. But really, one of the biggest markets near us is the Asian market. Can you talk a little bit about that and why you see that as, the point of opportunity?
Yeah, I think traditionally there's not many VCs in Australia. Part of the reason because there's not many startups and the ecosystem is not mature enough. But in the last couple of years, that really started changing. The government started supporting innovation and startups in Victoria and New South Wales especially. And we see a lot of interesting startups come up, and some that become really successful. And we just one of the companies that go founding overseas, but there are other, I saw it on the news a couple of days ago, Harper Anna's AI sort of startup in Sydney, they backed by Sequoia China as well, which is Stephen's second investment in Australia. The message is quite clear. These Asian investors are more actively looking at this market. They saw the startup ecosystem is picking up, and they wanted to find opportunities, especially early stage opportunities, to invest in and take them to the world stage and help them to scale the business globally. And one thing that I would like to say is these people are not that as hard as you think to reach, right? They actually most of the venture capital partners in this top end of the venture capital industry, they all educated overseas, either in top universities in the States or the UK. They have done deals or co-deals with Silicon Valley in the past. They all speak in fluent English and understand the Western culture pretty well. So I don't think that the really culture differences or understanding or barrier of understanding when you're pitching the ideas and pitching the business plan to them. I think that's something that the entrepreneurs and founding in Australia can explore further with looking founding overseas.
So when we chatted, I think you mentioned that you think focusing on funding is sometimes the wrong thing to focus on. Do you want to talk to a little bit about that, or what you see as the mark of success with Airwallex?
So for us, it's about we identify a problem and identify a market and how we can build a product to capture this opportunity. Obviously, in the early stage, you need a bit of funding upfront to be able to build a product. But once you sort of build that product, it's about how to scale the product and how to market the product more economically, rather than just purely focus on finding more money to grow the business. Sometimes you have to think about working out of economic model that can grow the business very quickly from a volume and margin perspective, and then it's become easier to raise funding. From my experience, that when we raise funding, it's not just about finding the right investor, it's also about finding the right partner. In this case, we raise funding from Tencent and MasterCard, so both are strategic partners and client of ours. So not just helping them from raising, sort of not just helping us from a financial perspective, but also we can identify a problem and helping them to grow that business and actually growing with that sort of global expansion, which is quite a good opportunity for us.
So you also have 5 founders, which is an interesting sort of setup for a company. And we hear so many stories about founder dynamics and how that can often be why companies fail. How do you work with 5 founders, and is that something you would recommend other people do?
This is a case-by-case scenario. In my case, I know the other 4 co-founders really well prior to founding Airwallex, and we all have different strengths, and 3 out of the 5 are technical people. And then Lucy, our CEO, is from sales and marketing background. So we kind of all have different skill set, and from a personality perspective, we have people that are aggressive and people that are quite mild, and we kind of complement each other from a team perspective. We know that, so I know the personality really well before I invited these people to join me to the founding team. I think it's critical to know the founders, and a lot of the startups failed because they have disagreement with other founders and all have different strategies. You have 2 co-founders are all really aggressive and really stubborn about what they want to do, and the company could be departed and all going completely different directions. I've seen that many times in the past. It's definitely something that not recommending to any other people. To having 5 co-founders is a bit extreme, especially from an investor's perspective. They will look at how your team going to work together. Are you guys going to have different opinions? And from a company structure perspective, how you make sure you're able to have one voice and one decision-making person. I think that's, if you have more than 2 co-founders, I think that's something you probably want to think of. Starting up with a sort of structure that, from a legal perspective, can ensure the consistencies in the decision-making process.
Was that ever an issue for investors, the fact that you had 5 founders?
Not really for us, because we kind of planned it ahead and we know exactly what we're doing, and not just only from a personality perspective. And
that's
also
good to know. I'm sure investors are happy to hear that too. So it wasn't an issue, or is there a way you structured it that would make it less of an issue? Was there anything you did?
Wasn't really an issue because we got a pretty good explanation. As most of the people are technical, and I'm on the product side, and we have Lucy on the marketing and PR and BD side. So we kind of all complement each other, and they will obviously interview the founders and see the personalities, and because I know the founders for more than 10 years, so we more than just business partners, and we're also good friends. So that also make the investors that believe we have extremely good relationship, which now been 2 years down the track since we started Airwallex. That proved they are right. So we worked extremely well between each other. Never had much arguments. So this all worked out well for us.
So we've spoken to companies today that have been around for 17 years and had long growth. You guys have had 2 years and fairly rapid growth in that time. What are some of the lessons you kind of learnt in those 2 years? Any kind of big mistakes you've made that you think are worth sharing?
I think the biggest, I wouldn't say mistake, because we're still in the growth stage, and we still try to figure out what is the best way to do it, and what is a mistake and what is not. I think that hiring in the early stage could be very important. To hire someone that have actually done that in the past, or haven't done that in the past, especially in the early stage, is really, really important. I would recommend founders and entrepreneurs to start looking at the people who have the right experience, even they are more expensive. But to get those people, you don't have to get everyone in the team to be senior, but you at least get the most senior person in the team that have done this in the past, have a bit of management experience. That would definitely help the company grow a bit faster. Also, when you do have funding, you're not able to onboarding people very quickly, especially in Australian market, as everyone is fighting for good resources, right? I would say what we learned is that we should have planned ahead a bit, like, basically have a pipeline of people that are ready to go when we have the funding into the door, right? Because it's literally, you had $10-15 million to the bank account, and we start hiring, and it's taken another 3 to 6 months to hire the right people, which is slow down the company quite a bit, because literally during that process, everything is inefficient, basically. You're really not maximizing the funding to its best potential. So I would recommend the founders to really look at planning, sort of resource planning and hiring in much advance, but also, not hiring too fast. Then you kind of have a lot of people that, sharing the sort of same amount of work. I guess finding that balance is really important.
And how does a young company, I guess, when you're talking to people that you really want to attract, how do you sell them to come and join you? Like, you're not giving someone stability or a big name yet. What are the things you kind of use to bring people on board?
I think that the founder's passion about what they do is really important. Whether we have a very simple vision that we're going to take the company forward in the next couple of years, so they exactly know what we're going to build. That's really important. For the young talent, it's very hard to sell the idea of share equities and that sort of stuff, because they need to, everyone get paid for the minimum wages, and they need to live, right? So I think rather than I would pitch to the people about a nice working environment that you can grow with a company. We're using the best technology, and you can learn a lot of stuff from the senior people. Where for the more senior people, it's much easier to ask them to take a pay cut and taking equities of the company as the package. First, we need the senior people to make commitment and show the commitment to us, and they really believe what we're doing, and wanted to basically get hands really dirty in this business and really committed to it, and helping do whatever it takes to help this business to grow. And these people can basically be in that sort of senior management level and the leadership level, and you have a bunch of younger people that they can learn from these senior people and grow the company together.
So we touched on the investment in your recent raise. I am interested to know what your advice is for companies going out to look for funding. How did you go about it? And I know we've had a few questions from the audience through the day. So it is something on people's mind. How what advice would you give to someone in raising?
Personally, this is all personal experience, right? I think the founder's passion is very influential. When people say someone talk about that business and they're really passionate about what they do and they know exactly what they're talking about, they figured out every single detail of the product they want to build. Because the VCs will ask you from different angles, not just once. They probably ask you the same thing 3 to 5 times in different times, and just to make sure you have a consistency of what you deliver in the message to the investors. You have a founding team that understands different perspective of the business and able to complement each other. You also have already built a product or already built a prototype that are able to demonstrate to the investors. I think that's all very important. The other thing is about how you can take the business globally. Australia is a relatively small market from a sort of internet perspective, and how you prove to the investors that you're able to scale the businesses to other countries, and how you're going to penetrate the market, what the market you identify as the opportunity, how big the opportunity is, and why you are the right person to deliver this product to the market. Why do you think you understand the market? What are the competitors out there, and how you're going to outcompete, and why you're going to be winning all the businesses. Never say that you don't have any competitors, right? Because they would never believe that you always have a competitors here and there. You might just take the product from a different slightly angle. I think it's really important to articulate that clearly in the early stage, so they believe you to understand this market really well.
So you also mentioned that in your fund, in the raise you just did recently, you were oversubscribed. How do you go about choosing which investors you go to, which is a nice problem to have?
For us, it's relatively easy. So basically, we look at Tencent is the biggest name in Asia Pacific, worth $400 billion. Also, the biggest payment company in China. And MasterCard is one of the biggest payment company outside of China. So getting to strategic investors like Tencent and MasterCard is a no-brainer. Then also on the board, we wanted to prove to other investors that we can get financial investor. Because those strategic investors generally, when they invest in you, they don't generally look at how many return they're going to have in 2 years and 3 years. They look at how they can work with you and bring strategic value to their own business rather than purely financial return. They look at financial return as well, but not as critical as the financial investors. To getting Sequoia on board, one of the best venture capital financial investor, which proves that our business model not just only validated from the strategic perspective, but also validated from a financial perspective. I think that's really important for our future business development, and eventually if we want to do RPO in the States, and Sequoia got the right resource there as well. I think it's something that I have to think really far beyond what we're planning right now.
Great. I think we've got some questions from the audience.
One of the questions, tell us what it was like after when you closed the round, when you found out that you got Sequoia. Well, before you closed the round, you'd obviously figured out you've got Sequoia on board, and then you closed the round. Talk us through what that was for you, what it meant for you, and also for your team.
I think before we close the round, we only have 3 months worth of burn rate left. Obviously, that's a critical time for us. Like it's literally we exist or not, right?
Yeah.
But obviously that we know that they're going to invest, much earlier. It's just the legal process will generally take 3 to 6 months. So it's taking a long time to close the round, especially when you have MasterCard and Tencent, those strategic guys on the investors, and they generally take much longer than financial investors. So we recommend the founders to sort of look at that balance and plan that ahead. What I feel like, the founders really all excited, and we said, let's buy a Tesla and paint it with Airwallex logos. And after we raised that fund, and then when we received the money, we was like, let's plan, how to save every single cent. So that Tesla thing never happened.
Fantastic. You spoke a little bit before about founders, and you've got quite a large founding team. Earlier in the day, we had Adir Schiffman talk to us about the difficulty of hiring staff, and you want the very best people in the world, but you can't necessarily afford them. Is having a large co-founding way a way to get over that, or is the large co-founding team something that presents more challenges than it's worth?
It's definitely the right decision for us. Because we're building a large infrastructure system, so it's not like we're building an app and we're building a simple like SaaS platform. The platform we're building, take 20 plus developers, almost 2 years to build the entire system, because it's a very large financial system. To have 3 technical people in the co-founding team, first we save a lot of money in the early stage. We're taking minimal salary, literally minimal. And we don't have to pay a lot of staff salaries, and in the early stage, when the investor wants something, we can build something very quickly, and we all work like 15 hours a day, so no one complain about it. It's difficult to persuade someone that not in the co-founding team to do the same thing. Not saying that's the right way of work-life balance, but to do a startup is kind of we do whatever it takes to get there, right? So I believe a successful founder would always have to have that mentality. Not saying it's the best thing for personal health or for family. I know the CEO of Alibaba, he literally, everyone knows Jack Ma, but no one knows who the CEO of Alibaba is. He's got health issues, and he's retired at like a very early stage. But he actually set up the fundamental culture and the management strategies and everything for Alibaba and take to where it is. It's a lot of sacrifice, basically.
So what do you do to help your mental health and your health generally going through this process?
I'm just really passionate about what we do. I think that helped me quite a bit when I'm talking to a client. I have one client literally saying, "Oh, you're really passionate. I just want to give you my business." that just really make a difference. People see you want to do the right thing for the client. And plus we really have built a system that can solve that problem. I think that is something adding value to the business is providing a vision for what the company going to look like in the next couple of years, and providing everyone that giving everyone the belief to inspire people of what we're building.
So another question's come through around staffing, and so we spoke a little bit more about the original founding team, but you've now got a nice lump sum of cash sitting in your account, and presumably you're growing your team. How easy is it to find the right skills in Melbourne?
It is challenging, especially for technical people. So lucky, we got a lot of technical co-founders, so we can assess that quite well. So we haven't really made much of a wrong hiring for technical people. I'm a developer for a long time, so basically I'll still try to interview most of our developers. I only hire people that are better than myself, which is a good benchmark. That definitely helps. But finding, I guess, in our industry is a very niche market, and not many people doing FX and payment, so it's very difficult for us to hire people in Melbourne. So basically, we had to hire people in Shanghai, in Hong Kong, in Singapore, in London. All these different jurisdictions around the world to find the right talent. But once you find the right people, they're kind of self-sufficient. The location is not really an issue. I think finding the right people, have the right skill set is much more important than the location.
So we've heard a lot about culture. So how do you build the culture of the organization when you've got such a distributed team?
That's extremely challenging. I don't think we have done the best yet. We're still in the process, or we say we're still struggling to increase the communication between the teams globally. But I think the important thing, again, is come back, the culture is organic. It's not something that you can influence, but you can't really build, right? I mean, in a macro level. It's basically you hire a bunch of brilliant people, they come together and build an awesome company together. I think come back to the first thing, to find the awesome people first.
So I'm interested to know what you plan on spending the money on. Did you
the Tesla?
I mean,
not the Tesla.
to be honest, right? It's not a lot of money. That when you look running, we expanded our company from 4 people to 60 people globally within 2 years, and especially now we're hiring a lot of very, very senior people. We're talking about hiring the head of transaction banking from a big bank, hiring the head of payments from one of the biggest payment company in the world, like Alipay or Tencent. Obviously, equity play a big role in that, but also is to let them to believe what you're building. And even that, they still have to get paid a decent package, right? So you're spending the money really fast. It's about getting revenue into the door early and able to getting tractions. And the money become lack of, an issue once you have traction and growth. I mean, you're always able to find investor. Indeed, the investor going to try to chase you. Literally that we got contacted by more than a couple of VCs every week. Just say, do you want money? Do you want money? But then it's about not looking at that. Look at what do you need. Really only raise when you have enough traction. And finding the right momentum for your own company, whether it's raising a convertible notes or raising a real equity funding or getting a loan from a bank. That's all different ways of raising money. To find the best way for your company is the most important thing.
So I had a comment come through to my direct line, which I'm going to flip into a question, which was around, you made a statement before about you didn't have many arguments with your co-founders. So clearly there have been times where you've challenged each other. How do you cope with that, and how do you manage that, and what's the structures that you put in place to deal with those moments of tension?
I didn't think I did that well, to be honest. I stressed out a bit. Well, I wouldn't say we wouldn't have argument. I mean, we're taking things about business and personal really separated. We could have really big argument about a specific problem and how we run the business. But that doesn't really impact our personal friendship or relationship. That's something that really bonding us together. So really have that work and personal life separation is really important. And it also depends on your co-founder's personality. I mean, it's really a case by case. Now, I got quite lucky, to be honest, I think.
So does one of you, in a group of 5, does one of you have veto? How does it sort of work, that dynamic? Or is it just kind of work to date, so you haven't had to address it?
I had the luxury that all the co-founders really believe in what I do and the decision I made. I really appreciate that that's the case up to date, and hopefully we can build something awesome together.
We've got another question that's come in about the investment side. So how did you balance the risk of taking strategic investment from MasterCard versus cutting off alliances with other potential investors that might be beneficial?
MasterCard is a very interesting company. They probably the most innovative company I've ever worked with. I mean, from a big corporate level, they have a lot of infrastructure set up in place. We wouldn't be at this stage if we weren't getting help from a MasterCard from early stage and working together. And now they are the largest client, so we're handling all the Asia Pacific cross-border transactions for MasterCard. But not every big corporate is the right partner. But you really need, and also when you're working with a big strategic partner, it's about not really who the company is, it's about who is your mentor, who is taking the initiative within that big corporation. It's the person that you believe in, not really the corporate you believe in. I think to suss it out in the early stage, and we got lucky that the guy who handled in the relationship within MasterCard is a big fan of us. He's more passionate about any of the guys I've seen in MasterCard, and he really championed our relationship and taking to the board of MasterCard and everyone that he met in MasterCard and saying, this guy's awesome, we should work with them, we should support these guys. And it's a bit of personal engagement as well, not just a corporate or branding, is to figure out, it's kind of basic instinct that you believe that this company can help you. As a founder, I mean, that basic instinct really helped a lot. Seems, yeah.
And we obviously want more corporates to come in and engage with the startup ecosystem. And it's really exciting to hear you talk so positively about MasterCard. And we know that there are other fantastic corporates, NAB and Australia Post and others that are really doing fantastic things for innovation. But in a general sense, you've travelled the world, you've worked with people around the world. What do you think of Australian corporates and their approach to the startup community?
That's a very tricky question.
We're looking for honest answers today.
That's a nah.
Is there something that you see positive when you're working with companies overseas that you think we could engender more in our local corporate environment?
It's a mindset thing, right? So UK take many years to become the hub of fintech. I can't really comment on other industries, but talking about fintech specifically, it takes a lot of people's effort and the government's effort to encourage that mindset, to build that ecosystem together. I think that Australia have the right opportunity to be the fintech hub in Australia and Asia Pacific right now. It's just a matter of how the corporates and the government that come together to work towards these initiatives. Again, it's come down to not what the corporate is or who the corporate is. It's about who is the person delivering this initiative. It's the person that working on this that going to make a huge difference.
And do you think there's more that organisations like LaunchVic, so for those of you that don't know, LaunchVic is a state government startup agency, and we're here to support the growth of the ecosystem. So I'm really interested to know, are there things that you think that organisations like ours should be doing to support companies like you? What would have been useful on your journey over the last 2 years?
I think what I've worked with the government, the most valuable thing is connections, right? So because we scale the business globally from get-go, getting to know the guys at Austrade in Shanghai, in the landing pad in Singapore, and get introduced to the consulate of the British government. That sort of relationship definitely helping us in the early stage to know the right people, to apply the financial services licenses, and actually got its innovation hub, and it's challenging to work, but it's still helpful. I mean, it's much better than nothing, right? So you're facing a lot of the government that just doesn't even have that initiative. It's still early stage for Victoria, but I think a lot of the things we're doing right now is all on the right track. I think if we can bring more talented people to participate into this initiative, and obviously the ecosystem can develop much more faster.
So there's a couple of questions that about your journey that you've obviously had a really truncated journey in as much as we've had founders that, like Kate Morris, who was on before, who's 17 years along that journey, and you've done this in a 2-year time frame. You've obviously had a very compressed learning in that time. What would you look back on? What advice would you give yourself today that you would have given yourself 2 years ago?
Think it again when you do it. No, I was just joking. So I would say be more sort of cautious about product development life cycle. So I'm a like perfectionism, put it this way. So I like to keep my house extremely clean, everything in the right order and everything in the right place. And if I say that I moved about centimeters, and I feel annoyed. But when you're building a product, if you build, I mean, that's the early mistakes we made, is don't try to do that. You're never gonna build a perfect product. Build a MVP that, just launch the market and let the customers tell you what is right and wrong. Finding the right people give you the right feedback is much more important, than building a perfect product, which is it's only perfect in your mindset, which is never perfect anyway. That's a big lesson we learned. But lucky enough, we have found the right people early stage to sort of crack me that we start changing the strategy and really focus on customer outcome, speed to market, and product service quality. We're always taking time to market. Is not saying we're going to build a crap product, but just finding the balances between product time to market and product service quality. Using these small iterations and shorter time frame to refactor the product and to develop better quality product in a very iterative manner. I think that's really, really important for entrepreneurs and founders. If let me do it again, I would basically save another $1 million at least, I think.
Yeah, very interesting. We can't thank you enough for your time. Congratulations on your successes at Airwallex. We really look forward to continuing to see you grow and all your successes into the future. And thanks again for coming and sharing your journey.
Thanks, Zhang.
Thank you.